Elizabeth Burdette. Welcome to Uncommon Philanthropist.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, it has been a delight to get to know you. And I must tell you, you were inspirational in starting this whole platform. Because when I heard you speak about generous giving and the whole power of philanthropy, I mean, it just, stars went off in my head. And I'm like, I really love what you do as a professional and your heart to help and serve other people through philanthropy. So thank you for that.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for sharing with the people of Uncommon Philanthropists. There's a lot we can learn
Absolutely.
from you.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. And any way that I can help you and this incredible project that you are embarking on, I'm thrilled to do so. So thank you.
Well, thanks. Well, so let's just start with a little bit about you, Elizabeth
Sure.
Burdette. Share more
Sure.
about yourself.
Sure. I say I'm an Atlanta native. I have lived in Atlanta since I was 8 years old after moving from Texas. But my husband would dispute that and say that he is the real Atlanta native because he is at least fourth generation Atlantan. But for all intents and purposes, today I'm an Atlanta native and I have 3 children, ages 7, 3, and 18 months. We're a very busy household and we live in Buckhead. I've been married to my wonderful, amazing husband. We are about to celebrate our 11th wedding anniversary this coming Saturday. So that's very exciting. And then professionally, thank you. And then professionally, I work at SignatureFD. We are a wealth management firm in Midtown here in Atlanta. And I have been there for about almost 5.5 years. And my role is I am our in-house philanthropic advisor, which is pretty much a dream job. So that's a little bit about me professionally and personally.
Okay, well, awesome. Well, let's get right in there
Sure.
into what you do as a philanthropic advisor. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, I'm very privileged to have this role. I'm the first person to sit in this role at the firm. It didn't exist before I came on board. So I give the firm, SignatureFD, a lot of credit for having the vision and kind of the creativity, if you will, to create this position 5.5 years ago. And what I do is essentially work with our clients who are primarily high net worth and ultra high net worth families and individuals, and some institutional clients, but mostly families and individuals, explore generosity and discover what it means to them to give back either to their families or, more often the causes and organizations that they really care about. Those charities and nonprofits that are working in spaces that inspire them. I do that within the context of wealth management. So I think the beauty of this role is I am literally sitting at the table next to their wealth advisor, sometimes their accountant, their financial planners, our investment team. And so all of it is baked into the suite of services that we provide with such a high degree of excellence anyway, that they aren't having to, there's two outcomes of that I think are really unique and beneficial. One is if they are looking for strategies and advice on giving, they don't have to leave the firm to go seek those out. The right hand knows what the left hand is doing. In other words, we're all part of one cohesive team. And then the other benefit is that maybe they weren't thinking about it, but our hope and aspiration is to encourage them to think about giving, obviously in ways that are the most tax efficient as possible, because that is our job, but also that are the most meaningful and impactful. And so I think that's what takes us a step beyond a lot of other great firms in our space with this role, because it's more than just, well, how can we maximize the tax deduction? It's, well, how can we do that? But then where are you giving it to? Like the money has to ultimately go somewhere. And how do you choose the organizations? How do you talk to your family about giving? How do you create a legacy, a purpose statement, and exploring really creative and sometimes complex ways of doing charitable giving that a lot of people just aren't aware of.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think you guys call it unlocking your generosity potential.
Yes, unlocking your generosity potential. Also, our kind of mission as a firm is helping our clients discover and pursue what we call their net worthwhile. So we're much more concerned about what people want to do with wealth and the change they want to create and the legacy they want to leave than just how much wealth they are accumulating. And so I think that the generosity piece really speaks to that. We also orient everything we do for clients around what we call 4 pillars. And it's GPGL. So it's grow, protect, give, and live. So everything that we try to do with clients' wealth and assets can be tied to one of those pillars. And you see that give is a pillar of what we do. It is very central to the way we serve clients.
I love that so much. And when you talk about the firm and you talk about wealth advisors, so I'm sure you have people of financial means. It's all over the board because it's a large, very well respected firm in Atlanta. And I don't know. One of the things I love about kind of this discussion about philanthropy for us, the uncommon philanthropist, it's really something anybody can do. We're all called to give and serve.
Yeah.
So somebody who hasn't really ever been exposed to philanthropy, philanthropic giving, where do you start that journey with them? Where do you start the discussion?
It's a great question. It's one of my favorite questions because it's what I do almost every day with our clients is help them just take that first step. And I want to go back
and there's a lot of people in that boat, right?
A lot of people. I would say the majority of my clients that I work with here, it's not that they've never given before, but they have never given strategically. Right. And so I always start with the definition of the word philanthropist. And it's, somebody that has, it's an expression of love for others, right? But the other highlight that's not necessarily the Webster's dictionary definition of philanthropist, but it's kind of the more utilitarian definition is it's somebody that gives with purpose and direction. So I like to say that anyone can be a donor, but my goal is to move our clients from being donors to philanthropists.
Yeah.
And anyone can also be a philanthropist. I think when you see the word philanthropist, you picture Bill Gates, you picture Andrew Carnegie, you picture, these huge Oprah, like whomever it is, these people that are giving away millions, Warren Buffett, hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's just not the case. Nowhere in the definition or the understood meaning of that word is it tied to an amount. It's only tied to having a strategy and a purpose and a direction for how you're giving, as opposed to just giving reactively, which I think is where most of us are, or most of us start, is we're giving reactively. And so my philosophy and my mission really is how to get people to move again from being a reactive donor to being a proactive philanthropist, no matter if they're giving away $1,000 a year or $1 million a year. The amount to me isn't that material. I mean, it's material to the details and perhaps the vehicles that we're going to use, but it's not material to the importance of those giving conversations and the importance of embracing a strategy. So that's why I love how you are approaching this project and the title of Uncommon Philanthropist, because I think it gets to that idea of you don't have to be Bill Gates to create real impact and also to find real meaning in giving. And so no matter your faith, no matter your background, no matter your asset size, net worth, I mean, I truly believe that each and every one of us was wired to be generous. And I also truly believe that there are some ways that are better than others to be generous. And so trying to explore that and educate folks in that pursuit.
Right. And I think it's like unwrapping a gift that you never knew you had.
Yeah.
Whenever you started
on
the philanthropic journey, it's like, it's a gift you never knew you had. And you
absolutely
haven't, and I'm amazed at how people we're in the wake of Hurricane Helene now.
Yes.
And how people, the media will say, give to, and it's always one certain organization that they always say give to, which they're doing great work. But there's hundreds of thousands of charity.
Right.
It's like, let's pause. Let's do our research like we do everything else.
That's
I mean,
right.
before you buy something on Amazon, chances are
right.
you're researching.
Right. You're reading reviews. Right. Right. And as
you know, to know the nonprofits in your community.
Yes.
And I think When we choose to get more close to those organizations serving, especially to those causes that we care about, you just begin to understand it so much better.
Yes. And
And then get involved.
a couple of points on that. I usually ask my clients to guess how many registered, doesn't necessarily mean they're active, but registered with the IRS, 3 charitable organizations that are in the United States. And usually people will guess like in the hundreds of thousands. It's 2 million. There are 2 million registered nonprofits in the United States. Doesn't mean they're active, but there's 2 million that are registered with the IRS and filed paperwork. And that is astounding for a couple of reasons. One, to me, it's astounding and so incredibly inspiring that there are 2 million organizations in our country seeking to do good and seeking to help others. Various degrees of that, right? Because there's nuances to the tax exempt status. But really, if you get down to it, those are organizations that are not seeking a profit, that are just seeking to help other people or animals or the environment or whatever it might be, to seeking to do better.
Right.
That is incredible. The other side of that, though, is it for donors, or rather philanthropists, aspiring philanthropists, that can be really overwhelming because where do you even begin if there's 2 million? I mean, people know the big names ones, and there's good reason for that because they have brand power and resources and great leadership and all of that. But to your point, there's hundreds of thousands that are grassroots community based that my hope is that people don't overlook. And so part of my role is to unlock people's generosity potential. And part of that is to connect them, almost playing matchmaker, do the research after I get to know them. And actually, this goes back to your original question, is how do I start with people, which I'm not sure that I actually answered. But I just get so excited. How I get started with people is we start a conversation around, on one hand, tell me about your past giving. And there's zero judgment if there hasn't been any past giving. But if there has, I like to know that to kind of understand where they're coming from. But more importantly, we do an exercise together to identify their core values and their passion areas. Because I'm a big believer that until you can articulate what are the guiding principles for which you are living your life, and what are the things that my catchphrase is, what keeps you up at night or gets you out of bed in the morning? Like, what are the things that get you fired up, either positively or negatively? What are the things that get your heart rate going, that inspire you, that maybe anger you, that break your heart? If we can identify your values and your passions, then we can start kind of unraveling that story of who you are as an individual or as a couple or as a family or as multiple generations of a family, to really understand what the specific personal story is that you are weaving through your giving. The reason we look at values, because sometimes clients kind of look at me sideways because they say, well, I'm sitting in a wealth management firm. Why are we talking about my values? And the reason we do that is because I'm a big believer that charitable giving is actually a critical form of free speech and self-expression. Because if you think about it, where you allocate your precious resources, whether it's your time or your money or your relationships, you don't have to do that. You could very easily say, I'm not going to write that check. I'm not going to go to that event. I'm not going to volunteer. So by doing that, you are saying, this is important to me. I am allocating my precious, limited resources to this organization, this cause, this person. And that is saying something. It says something if you write a check to the NRA versus a check to Planned Parenthood, right? Or anything in the middle. That says something about what's important to you. And so I like to tell my clients, there's really 3 main ways as an American that we're very blessed. There's 3 main ways that you can express your values externally. 1 is how you vote. 2 is just how you treat other people, and very especially how you raise your children. And 3 is where you give. Yes. That says something outwardly to the outside world about what's important to you. If you are a volunteer, I drove past a polling place today, and there were all these volunteers out there holding signs. That says something about what's important to them. And so I think that's the beauty of America in general, but it's also the kind of the beauty of our philanthropic kind of bent that we have. And so that's why we look at passions and values first, because I find a lot of clients, even if they have been giving in the past, it's not necessarily aligned with what they care about and how they view themselves. They give because they give to their alma mater, they give to their church, they give to their kids' school, they give because Bobby down the street asked them to. Nothing wrong with any of those. Those are fantastic. And I never tell anybody to stop. But I do ask them, do you feel like those are really connected to who you are as a person, and who you want to be remembered as? And they said, well, maybe not. I mean, I'm glad I've been doing it, but it's not the most meaningful thing to me. And that's where we kind of start that dialogue.
Well, and I've been digging in on a lot of this stuff regarding philanthropy, and Americans in general we're very generous.
Very generous.
As a country and as a nation, which I'm very proud of that.
Yes.
And I think people don't realize just how important nonprofits are.
Yes.
To the fabric. I read it where it's safety nets.
Yeah.
The safety nets within the U.S. are churches, nonprofits, and government.
Yes.
You take one of those away and you have some serious gaps.
That's right.
And especially the nonprofits. If the government had to fill in for all the work that nonprofits do, that's supported by philanthropists, I mean, our taxes would go sky high.
Yes.
So, I mean, they just really serve such an important part. And I'm very excited to be getting people connected with, organizations that, where they can engage and, it's not all about money. They might have skills and expertise.
That's right.
Or volunteer or,
that's right.
Go to your local food pantry and help stock shelves. I mean, there's any, mentor a young person. There's just any number of ways you can give of yourself.
That's right. And I think to that point, and back to our point about the 2 million nonprofits, that in and of itself can be a little bit of a stumbling block for some people when they're getting started because the need is so overwhelming. It's like, well, there's hunger and there's disease and there's educational gaps and there's income gaps and there's housing. I mean, it's like, where do you even start? Even if you're just focusing on your local community. And so that's where the values and passions identification and digging in on that, it is a game changer, because the fact of the matter is none of us are going to be able to solve every problem. And so I would rather myself and my clients pick one area, maybe 2 or 3, but 1 to 3, call it areas or causes or organizations, and go much deeper there.
Yes.
So switching from a shotgun approach to a rifle, like really, what are the 1 or 2 or 3 places that if you really do focus your efforts and your resources, you actually could move the needle, instead of kind of analysis paralysis, sitting back and saying, what on earth could little me do? Because there's so much need. Well, little you could actually do a great deal if you just cut off one slice that means the most to you, that is going to be the most energizing for you, because you are going to give in more if there's that connection and that meaning and that purpose tied to it.
And I think a lot of people, those especially who are not exposed to philanthropy, they really don't, how much is enough? How much is enough for you to have?
Right.
And if you just kind of have that saver mentality, that it's my money, I've worked for it, I earned it, it's mine, you'll never give it away. And you'll have, chances are you probably have a whole lot more than you or your children will ever need. So how do you begin to kind of pry those fingers open and really help people to begin to soften and to think? And I know some people are skeptical about nonprofits.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me a whole lot of grief. Because I think, there's always a couple of bad actors that will kind of paint unfairly a picture of a whole segment. So how do you work with your clients on?
That's a really great question. And I have to be honest, I'm super fortunate that most of the clients I'm working with don't have that mentality, because if they are opting in really to our firm and our kind of entire philosophy, and then even a step beyond that, opting into working with me, they have some kind of affinity or willingness to engage in the giving conversation. Now, having said that, there's different levels of that, right, in every client experience. So I think one of the, it kind of depends if the client or the person is more of a pragmatist, or if they're more kind of if it's more of an emotional response. More of a pragmatist, I say, look, you have to give the money away anyway. At the end of the day, at the end of your life, it's either going to go to the government, it's either going to go to charity, or it's going to go to your family. And so most people, I have yet to meet anyone that says, oh, absolutely give it all to the government. I mean, I haven't met that person. They might exist. I haven't met him or her yet. So when you frame it that way, like, you are not going to keep it. Like, yes, you could keep it for your lifetime at the end, but ultimately it's going to have to go somewhere. And when you reframe it that way, that can be fairly motivating for people to say, well, I know I don't want the government to get the bulk of it. And, maybe in a lot of cases, I don't actually want my children to get too much. And that's a whole other conversation about what too much is. Right. Because that's dependent on the family and the dynamics and all of that. But that reframes it, I think, for the pragmatist of, I hear what you're saying, and I understand that I really do understand that scarcity mentality of what about it's a rainy day and all that. I really do. Mm-hmm. But there is one inevitable truth, which is we are all going to pass away and we can't take it with us. And so this is your opportunity to make a decision about where your hard-earned assets are going to go before it's decided for you. So that's kind of the pragmatist approach, is it getting them to understand and embrace that control that they have now that they will ultimately lose. For the more emotional folks who maybe that closed hand is more because it's really based in fear, or and I actually don't think that there's that many truly greedy people. I think a lot of that is fear.
Fear. Absolutely.
I really do. I don't think it's, at least I have not met ever really anyone that I would say, oh, that's just pure greed. I think it's fear. And then there's some pride too, of I've earned this, I've built this. Sure. And that's all very understandable. That's when I kind of have to put a little bit of like a therapist hat on, which I'm not a therapist, I want to be very clear, but I kind of have to play one on TV and dig in with that client a little bit and say, let's talk about where that's coming from. And I would also say, I'll just have to give them a shout out. Our wealth advisors are excellent at that as well. Not just in the charitable giving piece, but just kind of in all of the financial guidance they give. But digging in and saying, where's that coming from? Talk to me about that. And, 9 times out of 10, it's unbelievable, but that client will open up and start talking because people want to talk about themselves and they want to tell their stories and they want to feel seen. And so they just need to be asked. And so I think it's kind of those two approaches of the pragmatist and then the emotional response, and just helping people work through that themselves.
Yeah. Well, and we still have those Depression era.
Absolutely.
People, that
absolutely
really knew what hunger was, to have nothing, to have to cover up with newspaper. It's like, we still have those precious people in our midst.
Yes, we do.
And if any one of us would have gone through something like that, it just really shapes how you.
It does.
How you view money and the fear of lack of. So it's so interesting how you, you're part financial, you're part, and I think there's attorney in there too.
Yeah,
there's an attorney.
It's a little bit of everything. I'm a mutt. I'm a professional mutt, which hopefully means I'm very lovable. So yes.
Let's talk about generosity in kids, because I know you're in the midst of raising kids.
I am.
How can we teach our kids to be generous and philanthropic from an early age? Do you have any insight on that? I know they're not your target audience except for your 3, but
I know they are not my target audience. Although I would say the second most frequent question I get from my clients, probably number 1, is a hybrid of how much should I be giving and what organization should I give to? Some hybrid of that is probably the number 1 question that I get. But I would say the number two question I get is, how do I talk to my children about this? Whether their children are 2 or 32. I mean, and I've worked with kids who are children of clients that range in ages from 10 to my age in their 40s. So I love this question. There's tons of resources out there. I just want to be very upfront. This is not my specific area of expertise. There are so many really great books and resources about raising generous children, or at least not raising not entitled children. We could do 3 sessions on that. But at a high level, and especially because I am the mother of 3 young kids, I think the best thing a parent can do that is honestly the easiest is just modeling it. So modeling meaning, actually physically let them see you give. So even, for example, even if you give to your church, not that many churches pass the plate anymore because it's all online, but if your church does pass the plate, show your kids you putting the money into plate, even if you're giving to them through your donor advice fund or on your credit card or whatever, or give your children money to put in the plate, or ask that they, whatever that might look like, but just simple modeling of putting money in the plate at church, bringing a meal to a neighbor, when they have outgrown a toy. This is a great example. So my children have more stuffed animals than probably a small country. I mean, that's their thing. We just end up with so many of them. And so about once a year, I ask my 2 older children to go through the house with a big bag, and they pick out all the stuffies they don't want anymore. And then they write a note. Now we take it to Goodwill, or we take it different places. There are different organizations that we like to take them, but I mean, they aren't very good writers. I want to be very clear. So they either dictate a note or they write a note to the children that they think are going to have them. And it's something like, I really hope you like Elephant because he made me feel better when I was sick. So there's that personal connection of, you're not just like throwing it in a dumpster somewhere, but no, there's a child that's going to get this stuffy that you've loved, and trying to make it more personal to them. I think just the modeling, and then just being fair, being honest in an age appropriate way. So there are a number of homeless people that are just in our immediate neighborhood. And so we see them every day. And my 7-year-old has started to ask a lot, pretty much daily, why are they there? Are they poor? Are we poor? Are we rich? I mean, a lot of questions about money that are tough. And I frankly wasn't really prepared to talk about. And so what I say is, mommy and daddy work really hard so that we can have a house, and that we can have a car, and that you can go to school, we can have food. Some people have a really hard time in life and they don't have those things. And those are the people we need to help. And so just not just saying, oh, I don't know, look the other way. And then the last thing, and we started doing this during COVID, and I frankly kind of have fallen off on it, but keeping gift kits in our car so that when we do see those people, we're not just giving them cash, but like a bag with a toothbrush and as a snack and a water, and maybe some socks and like a coupon to, McDonald's or something. And we used to do that, and I've fallen off, but I like that too, because your kids can help you make them. And then they can help you hand them out. And so I guess the big picture is modeling and honesty, and then helping them connect personally with whomever you're helping. And the last story I'll tell on that is, I'm on the board. I'm very, very, very privileged and delighted to serve on the board of Special Olympics of Georgia. And so I brought my then 5-year-old with me to the summer games to volunteer with me. And she volunteered at the soccer event. And, Rena, it was so beautiful because they were normal kids, which they are normal kids, but she thought they were kids just like her. And I think exposing her to that, like, she just thought she was at a soccer tournament, and then she was handing out the medals, and I don't know, just that exposure. We're going to go take a Saturday and go do this and have a lot of fun. I think it was really good. And she still talks about that. So
They're all such
just little, that's what I'm trying to do at home. Like I said, there's plenty of books you can read. There's that whole principle of teaching your children, give, save, spend. So if they get an allowance, they have to, there's different ways to give percentages to it, right? Everybody has a different perspective, but that the largest percentage they need to give away, the next largest percentage they need to save, and then they're allowed to spend. And so that's a great philosophy too for a little bit older kids.
Sure. And I read somewhere that if you grew up with philanthropy being part of your family culture,
Yes.
where, you talked about it in the house, that chances are you're going to follow suit and you're going to do that with your family as well.
Right.
And that was not a part of conversation in my home. I didn't really grow up with that. I just knew that it was something that was missing.
Sure.
Just kind of inherently, I knew that.
Sure.
Not a big deal. I never faulted my parents for it because, they were doing the best that they could. But I just knew it was something that was missing. So
yeah. There also, this was an interesting study that came out during COVID, and I'm going to misquote it, but Emory University put out a study during COVID about, there were all these studies that are still going on about children and anxiety during the pandemic, and how isolated they were and anxious and all those things. And one of the things that they found that really in a very meaningful way helped to ground these children and bring them more like better mental health outcomes was feeling connected to their family story, which I thought was really interesting. So in other words, if they understand where they come from and where their grandparents came from, both literally and figuratively, like they came over from another country or they grew up in this town, they had a business, or understanding that family narrative and feeling like they are a part of it, increased their odds of beating anxiety or loneliness, or increasing their better mental health outcomes, because they felt like they were part of something. They didn't feel so isolated. It's like, no, I'm part of the Smith family, and the Smiths are all from North Carolina. I mean, you feel part of something. You feel included and seen. And kind of the deeper level of that study was a great way to tell the family story around the dinner table is to talk about giving. And, our family, I'm going to, we in the Burdette house, we tell our kids, we give to Covenant House of Georgia because that's an organization that's really important to us. And this is why. And so it kind of starts these wheels in your kids' heads of, I'm a Burdette, I belong here, and this is what Burdettes do. And this is what Burdettes care about. And it doesn't mean they can't go off and find their own causes, but it gives them a foundation to say, where I come from and what my identity is. And I feel so much safer and secure in knowing what our family's values are. So if for no other reason, I mean, just to give your child, no matter their age, a better launching point for mental health is knowing their family's story and how generosity fits into that family story.
Just so deep.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I don't know. I believe we need to be talking about generosity and giving and serving a whole lot more. I mean, it's just not part of, people are talking about sports and
I know
politics, and I'm like, and there's time and place for that. But I would think all of us can pay a little bit more attention to giving and serving and opportunities to invite other people to do so too.
Yeah.
So can you share a charitable moment that particularly moved you?
Oh gosh, a lot from my clients. I'm just trying to think of a really, really good one. Yes. So there is a client family where I had the honor of working with. And I worked with two generations of the family and kind of two branches. So adult brother and sister, their spouses, and their children, young adult children. And the relationship started because the matriarch, she has since passed away, but the matriarch was suffering from dementia and in a assisted living home. And she had a charitable giving account, a donor advised fund that she could no longer administer because she didn't have the mental capacity. And so the adult children came to us and said, we want to start giving this away, but we want to give it away for her, to what she loved, right? We could easily give it away to the things that we care about that are local, but we want to really honor And so we went, now they all lived in the Northeast. So everything we did was over Zoom, which was challenging, but it ended up being really beautiful because we were able to do all these multi-generational conversations, and you could tell the cousins were learning about each other and the aunts and the uncles. And it was just so wonderful. And they got this beautiful experience talking about the grandmother. Anyway, they ended up making 3 grants to organizations that either she loved or they felt like she would have loved, that were in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And one of them is this fabulous organization called Shining Hope Farm, and it's a equine therapy center outside of Charlotte. So they serve first responders and veterans with PTSD, and then children with disabilities. So whether it's cerebral palsy, autism, some kind of muscular degenerative issues. So because I have the best job in the whole world, I got to go, because the family was in the Northeast, I got to go to a site visit at Shining Hope Farm and put on my boots and walk around and meet the horses. And I took pictures. It was so amazing. Long story short, the Shining Hope needed a new tractor. And so the family made a grant to buy them a new tractor. And the tractor, they named the facility named the tractor the LET after the grandmother. The grandmother was Ellie Taylor. So now if you go to the Shining Hope Farm outside of Charlotte and see the LET tractor, it's named after this, who at the time was still alive, but was not mentally there. And it was all through this process of the family getting together, really remembering and honoring her, then making this wonderful gift that is going to serve these children and veterans like for years to come. I mean, it was just, I don't know, all the little pieces. It wasn't the largest gift I've ever worked on. It wasn't, the most high profile or anything, but something, and that was several years ago, but something about that one, probably because my mother has Alzheimer's. And so it really just, and I also love horses. So for me, it was just really powerful. But I loved how the family came together on that. And they had kind of a leap of faith and made a gift to a place they had never even been and never even heard of. But they just said, Ellie would love this. And it's just such an inspirational experience. So again, it wasn't an enormous gift, but it was enormous for the family in terms of meaning. And then the even more beautiful piece was the family went on to do their own giving journey together. And it was really all inspired by the grandmother. So again, back to this concept of a family's narrative. They told me afterwards that they felt so much more connected to each other as a family after that experience because they were all coming together around Ellie and Ellie's story and what a pillar of the community she was, and just honoring that. So that's one of my favorites.
That is gorgeous. And I think this ties right into the joy of giving.
Yes. Yes.
And how, my mom had Alzheimer's too. And, the way that family honored her is just so cool.
It was, I know you're making me tear up too. It's the worst disease, but it was just, and all the credit to the family for saying, we're going to give to this place sight unseen. When they were on the phone with the director. I mean, it's not like they knew nothing. I mean, I did the site visit and we, did all the things, but, I just said, I really think this is the spot. And there's something very special happening in this place. And
the fact her name is on a tractor.
On the tractor.
She's being talked about all the time.
Bring the LET. Where's the LET? Bring the LET over here. I mean, it's just... Yeah.
That is a phenomenal story. And so if you haven't been exposed to philanthropy and that joy in giving, it's like God just hardwires us to want to help other people.
We're built for it. We are.
And I'm sorry if you've never had that exposure to it too, but we're here to help you, get there.
Right.
Start small. Right?
Absolutely.
Start small. Start in your neighborhood. Talk to people who are volunteering or serving, or that that are philanthropic, and most people love to talk about their philanthropic journey.
Oh
It's
my gosh,
always
it's a great way to get to know people. It's just say like, hey, I want to get involved in the community. Tell me about like, are you involved or do you give anywhere? Do you volunteer? I mean, people love talking about that. And it's a great way to get to know them. It's a great way to share something about yourself. I mean, it's just again, it taps into that core piece of who we are in terms of what we value, what's important to us. I just think that again, it's how we're wired. There's this, and then if you want to even go a little bit deeper, there's this great book that I try to give to all of my clients called The Paradox of Generosity. And it was written by two Notre Dame professors in I think 2014, but they've released an updated version. And they studied a group of they had two groups of people that they followed for a number of years. One was a group of people that did not really engage in any kind of ongoing generosity, meaning like on a weekly is part of their life, right? And then a group of people that did, but it wasn't just financial giving. I always tell people that. And to your point about starting small, again, just because you don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to give away does not mean you cannot lead a generous life and you can't be a philanthropist, right? And so there's this group of people that did engage in ongoing acts of generosity, whether it was financial giving, helping a neighbor, giving someone your parking space. I mean, just anything, little things, right? And they watched these folks. Their health outcomes in pretty much controlling for every other factor were significantly higher than the folks that did not engage in ongoing, meaningful, daily, a posture of generosity, if you will, in their life. Lower heart disease, lower depression, lower anxiety. They lived longer. All of their health outcomes were better. And to me, that just confirms this concept that, again, we were wired by our Creator to connect with other people and to give to other people of what we have. And when we do that, we are rewarded in health and joy. You know, the Surgeon General has declared that loneliness is our number one health threat in the United States.
that is crazy.
Loneliness,
Epidemic
right?
of loneliness is
It's
what
an
he's calling
epidemic of loneliness. That's right.
epidemic of loneliness.
And in his report, which I actually encourage everybody to read, I think his name is Dr. Vivek Murthy, in his report, one of the things that he specifically calls out as a way to combat this is generosity, is volunteering, is bringing dinner to a neighbor, is making a financial gift. I mean, whatever that looks like for you, but in the Surgeon General's report, he said, this is one of the best tools in our toolbox for fighting this epidemic. And it's pretty profound for the nation's top doctor to be saying, this is the prescription. We need to be giving. So I love that too. But I could go on and on and on because I love
No, we
this.
can get out of
I
this
mean,
stuff.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah. The tractor story, that's
I know. It's just the best.
well, this is kind of a personal question.
Please.
Can you share a challenging moment or time in your life that ended up being a blessing in the
Oh my
end?
gosh. I mean, where do I start? I feel like every challenging moment has ended up being a blessing. Absolutely. I was married before my current husband, and it was a very brief 6-month marriage. And it was a incredibly unhealthy relationship. I won't go into details because out of respect for my ex, and the hope that he is rebuilding his life. It was incredibly damaging for me in pretty much every way conceivable. So I at the end of when that was falling apart, I mean it was falling apart before we were even married, but when the marriage was unwinding fairly dramatically, you can imagine I was at my very, very lowest point. I was living in Texas, away from my family. He had isolated me from everybody that I had cut me off from pretty much everybody that cared about me. And I was really at rock bottom. And I think at that point, my life could have gone a lot of different ways. I could have just kind of given up. I could have gone back to him out of fear. I could have just kind of wallowed in self-pity. I mean, there's a lot of different ways I could have gone. I could have let anger and bitterness really define me and kind of gone through the rest of my life just bitter and disillusioned about love and life. But I heard the Lord speak to me literally out loud, in one morning. And I listened. And so then I left, and there was never any bitterness or anger. There was never self-pity. It was just, okay, now another chapter of my life is going to start. And I get to start over, and a lot of women don't. And use my credit cards or debit cards because he would find me. So everything was cash. And again, I want to be very clear. I believe that he has rebuilt his life, and I don't mean him I wish him nothing but all the best. But that's where we were in that moment. And changed the trajectory of my life. I came home to Atlanta. I had like a completely new perspective on my faith, on who I wanted as a partner, on what was important in life. And through that experience, I also had another kind of corollary experience during that time that gave me the idea to start this giving circle, Bloom.
Yeah.
And that's where the seeds of Bloom were planted, was during that experience, because I had this incredible encounter during that time with this woman. I don't want to take up too much time, but during that time in a movie theater with a total stranger who I now really believe was an angel, and had this extraordinary experience connecting with her, total stranger. And it literally was the same week I was living in Airbnbs, going like from Airbnb to Airbnb. And I just went to a movie in the middle of the day and met this woman and changed my life. So all that to say, very tragic, very difficult, could have sent me on a completely different path. And instead, by the grace of God, and thanks to wonderful family and friends as well, I feel like that was the closing of a door on a dark chapter and an opening of a door on like the most beautiful present and future. And again, I think that's part of why I'm really driven in this work, is out of compassion and understanding, especially for women who have gone through abusive situations, because I've seen that, I've known that, and it doesn't always end up well. And would also not be where I am, obviously, without my faith, but also without people helping me. I mean, my old boss, where I had left my job in Atlanta to go be with this guy in Texas, took me back in Atlanta just with open, this is when I was practicing law, took me back with open arms and said, we want you back, gave me my job, like no questions asked. I mean, just so many people were so generous and forgiving of me, that I can't help but keep that at the forefront of my mind every day, and just try to live in a space of gratitude, and to channel that gratitude into generosity.
Sharing that so much. So many times when we go through really dark days like that, people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to go there. But I think it's healthy for the person that shares the story. And sometimes people need to know those stories, right? Because I mean, to look at you, never in a million years would you ever think,
right?
It's like,
right.
You've so got it together in so many ways. Beautiful, beautiful career and family, and just living out, such a purpose-filled life. Sometimes it's, we don't see everything. So I just really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Sharing that part of your story, and that part of what breaks your heart, because we all have those. Some bigger than others. Well, let's talk about Bloom Atlanta, and what exactly is a giving circle?
I would love to. So Bloom Atlanta is a project that was born out of that experience. And that experience was the summer of 2011. And then we launched in 2022. Yeah. So it was about a decade of just kind of thinking about this and dreaming about it, but being very scared and reluctant to take any kind of action. We are a giving circle. So a giving circle, and they can look a lot of different ways, but a giving circle is essentially when a group of people comes together to pool their resources and then make collective grants. So a lot of giving circles are single sex, like there's women's giving circles, men's giving circles. I know in Atlanta, there's some specifically African-American giving circles. They have giving circles for children. I mean, they can look a lot of different ways, professionals, neighborhoods, all kinds of things. Bloom, so the concept has been around for a long time. Bloom really emerged out of that experience of feeling like I was the beneficiary of so much generosity. Also, that this connection with this stranger, this woman going through cancer treatment, really just, can't even describe it, really just kind of changed my entire heart and outlook. And it made me understand the incredible power of human connection. And also specifically the incredible power of female connection. Like women are extraordinary, and we all have so many stories to tell, and there's just so much we can do when we come together. So we're a giving circle that was born 2 years ago. We just kicked off our 3rd year. I know you were there, so thank you.
Awesome.
And we are very focused on Atlanta. We have about 130 members. We're trying to reach 200 this year. And we pool all of our resources to make one collective gift to one partner organization per year. And the purpose of Bloom, we are what we call ourselves is we're a community of purpose-driven women seeking to change the lives of women and children here in Atlanta. So we're focused on women and children locally. Our ask for people to join as a member is $1,000, but we accept gifts of any amount. So we've had people give $25, people give $5,000, like, and everything in between. And that's great.
That's
and
like
really,
it's
a yearly gift. So to be a member each year, you have to make a new gift every year because we make a new grant every year. And the purpose of Bloom is really to break down barriers. So on one hand, we're trying to break down barriers for us, the women, the donors, because there's so many women in our city that want to give back and have the resources to give back, but they're like, and I mean, I heard this literally from friends. I don't know where to start. I don't know what the good organizations are. I don't have time to volunteer. I can't really afford to give that much. Like just I don't want to call them excuses because they're real. They're real. But the barriers. To getting engaged, breaking those barriers down by doing the research ourselves. We have a council. There's 10 of us that are basically a board. And we do the research. We identify the organizations. We also accept nominations from the members. And then we have 4 gatherings a year. So it's a really low time commitment. And you don't even have to go to one if you don't want to. They're really fun. So we think you should, but you don't have to. So it's basically a 0 time commitment. And then we do all the legwork for you. And then breaking down the barriers for the nonprofits so we don't ask for applications. In the past, we've actually surprised a nonprofit that they were a finalist, but that's happened several times actually, where they didn't even know that they were a finalist. So they don't have to file an application. Also, the grants are always unrestricted. So they could do whatever they need to do with that money, which if you know anything about the nonprofit sector, that is huge. Huge. And so we are very thoughtful about that piece, that we're not going to tell them how to spend the money. Our first year we raise, and every single dollar that we raise goes out. So the money that we use to do our gatherings in our kind of programming is either paid for by the 10 council people, or we do have a very small membership fee that just offsets those costs. But every single dollar that is donated is then donated out. So the first year we raised $60,000 for a group here called Motherhood Beyond Bars that is fantastic nonprofit. Executive director is Amy Ard, and they support incarcerated women who are pregnant. And then even more so, they support those babies after birth who are then just placed with caregivers who more often than not are completely unprepared to raise an infant. And also that infant has so many risk factors already, incarcerated parent, no father, a lot of times there's drug abuse. I mean, all kinds of things. At the time we made that grant, that was the largest single gift that Motherhood Beyond Borders has ever gotten. So we're really proud of that. They're growing like wildfire. They're extraordinary. And then last year, our second grant was to a group called Mothers Advocacy Project. And they are also a local organization, and their mission, led by Chelsea Sabo, who is also extraordinary. And their mission is to keep single mother families intact. So what does that single mother need to prevent her children from being taken by defects? So is it job training? It's a lot of trauma-informed therapy, food, meals, rides to work, rides to kids' school. I mean, just what are the wraparound services and care and support that mother needs to be successful and to raise her children? It gave them $75,000. So where we are in the process this year has been kicked off, and we are actually tonight the council is narrowing it down to 3 finalist organizations. Those will be announced in November, and then every member who's given a gift of any dollar amount will have the chance to vote on the one partner. Then we not only make a grant to that partner, but we also volunteer with the partner in the spring. And then we take the summer off, and we will kick off again next year. So it's been really, personally for me, one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, maybe outside of my marriage and my children. Love it. I've met so many people. It's been challenging, but super invigorating. I love it. And I have to give a shout out. Our partner is the North Georgia Community Foundation. So we are not ourselves a charity. We're not a 501c3. We just have an account with the North Georgia Community Foundation that is a charity. So all of the gifts that come in are tax deductible, but it just means less work for us because we don't have to do all of that on our own. And so they are an amazing strategic partner, and Michelle Prater and her team, they're incredible. So that's been a beautiful relationship. But yeah, it's fun. If you're a woman in Atlanta, our website is www.bloomatl.org. And you could follow us on Instagram. And I hope I get this right. It's bloom.atl on Instagram. So we would love to have you.
And I think there's a North Atlanta chapter.
And we are launching. Thank you, Rena. We are launching. This is super exciting. So we've had such great momentum that there are these 2 sisters who live in Milton, who are fabulous, Chrissy and Lauren, and they raised their hands and said, we need this in Milton and Alpharetta, that's specific to Milton and Alpharetta. So we are launching that chapter, if you will. It's our first, satellite chapter. First baby next year. So that'll kick off next fall. So we are thrilled about that. So we're getting momentum going for our lovely lady friends in the northern side of the city.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, and just to provide context, the first time I heard about a giving circle, I heard it described as 100 women, each giving $1,000.
Yes.
So the end result, they can give $100,000 grant. So instead of just, fragmenting giving here and there, it's just that whole power of collective giving and the community that comes around it. And being at your Bloom Atlanta meeting, you could just see the sisterhood that is in place, and that's a beautiful thing about serving together too. Is that?
Yeah, it's just been things are more fun when you do them together. They just are, especially for women. So that was not only by doing it together are we amplifying our generosity, right? We're able to do so much more monetarily together and through volunteering, but it's just more fun to be together and enjoy each other and learn together and then serve together. It's just more fun, in my opinion. So the response has been amazing, and we're going to be featured in Simply Buckhead magazine in January, the January-February issue, which is amazing. So we've got great momentum. We welcome women of all ages, neighborhoods, towns, professions, anything. And we feel like it's a really great movement. So I'm very proud of it.
I could hang out and talk with you all day long about this stuff.
Same.
For now, we're going to close with the lightning round. So I just have few questions, just fire it off. And then we're going to close it out. I'm going to ask you to say my tagline in the way that you would say it. Okay. Best part of living in the ATL?
Ooh, the people. Best people.
Favorite pastime or hobby?
I'm an outgoing introvert, so I really love to be alone with a book. Deal.
There you have it. Daily activity that brings you joy.
Being outside, taking a walk with my kids. And then I would add to that, and this shows who my favorite child is right now. I'm sorry, girls, but when I go in to get my youngest, my little boy, out of his bed in the morning, and his smile is just, it's everything. So,
How about some marriage advice you can give us?
oh, and I don't know if this is marriage advice, but somebody told me this once, and it's so true, is that who you pick as your partner is the most important decision you will ever make in your entire life. More than your job, more than where you live, anything. So pick somebody that you like to be around.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this stuff will go away, but it's got to be somebody you just like to be with.
Yeah. Forever is a long time.
Forever is a long time.
Best part of being a parent?
Watching your kids discover something or learn something for the first time.
Well, I'm a good bit
Yeah.
older than you. Wait till you watch your kids be parents.
No, I know. Can't
It's
imagine.
insane. What is something people might be surprised to learn about you?
That I'm an outgoing introvert. I think most people are really surprised to hear that. Yeah, I really am. I have to be alone and have my downtime to recharge. I think that is probably the most surprising thing.
Best part of being an uncommon philanthropist?
I feel like in my calling is helping other people find their path and their calling. And I'm not sure there's much that's more rewarding than that.
So we're going to close it out. So
Yeah.
the tagline of Uncommon Philanthropist is let go.
Let it go or let go?
Let go. As in let go of yourself.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Let go.
Okay.
So give me your most
right.
emphatic let go.
Okay, here we go. Let go.
That is very emphatic and heartfelt. Elizabeth Burdette, you are a delight.
Oh, Rita, thank you.
I can't thank you. You've been instrumental in this whole thing.
Oh my gosh,
and,
thank you.
I just hope you'll call me when you get to go do those site visits so I can tag along.
I will. I will let you know. I would love to have a partner on
there
this.
to ride in the car and to
That's
report
right.
back because I really
That's
do
right.
want to be connecting, provide a platform
Yeah.
for nonprofits to share their story. And I definitely would love introductions to the
Yes,
nonprofits
I
that
will.
have been beneficiaries of Bloom
I
and Hannah,
will.
so they can come to share their stories.
I will. I will.
Okay.
Thank
my
you.
sister.
Thank
Keep
you.
shining, keep doing the great
Oh,
work. and
you
I just
too,
appreciate
friend.
so
Thank you.
much. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Go.